raw pork chops, pink skin on squishy rubber soles. What are these? Are they casual boots? Work boots? Let's see. G'day, I'm Tech and welcome back to Bootlosophy. I'm filming on Whadjuk land in Perth, Western Australia, and I acknowledge their continuing connection to the land and sea here. Now, this pair of boots is a confusing combination of emotions for me. They are well made and priced in the mid-US 400s, but people have said to me, why the crepe rubber sole? The natural veg tan is initially an unattractive pork chop pink when they arrive, but they don't stay unmarked. See what I did there? And they do mellow in time into a kind of warm toffee. The veg tan smells gorgeous, but man, they are stiff and hard to break in. So at almost every perspective, they go from praise to raising questions. Let's dive in. So the first thing to look at are their style and aesthetics. I mean, in style terms, what are they? It's hard enough to categorize a service boot, you know? Like, when is a 6-inch high derby lace-up boot with or without a toe cap a service boot? Is the Iron Ranger a service boot or a work boot? As a management consultant, I like categorizing things and it annoys me. As a neurodivergent, it really upsets me. I want to put it into the right category, into the right hole. So here's my dilemma. What is this? A work boot, or is it a work boot styled boot for casual wear? I mean, it's durable enough to wear as a work boot on factory floors and warehouses, but the outsole rules out digging in the yard. I hate this, but I'm going to not identify the style except to say it's a 5.5-inch tall boot measured from the top of the heel with a derby or derby open lacing system, a flat sole with a low block heel. It has a plain rounded toe with a slight toe bump, bright brass eyelets, and a very prettily shaped single-piece backstay. As an uncategorized thing of beauty, it's like Keats's beautiful Grecian urn. All you need to know, look it up. But as undefined as it is, what the hell do you pair it with? Well, can't go wrong with workwear really, because let's face it, it looks like it should be a work boot. Something Timberland about it, no? Can't go wrong then with denim jeans and a t-shirt. Throw on Huckberry's Flint and Tinder wax trucker jacket for coolness. Or in cooler months, flannels and a waterproof coat like a Flint and Tinder waxed Hudson jacket. I've also been wearing it a lot with a pair of khaki chinos and a crisp white shirt, and then throw on a leather jacket. It gives you vibes of flying P-40s in the Flying Tigers. For some reason, maybe the natural veg tan color and the toe shape, it seems right for a dressed up casual outfit, and you can even go further by replacing the leather jacket for a blazer like this one as well. So workwear or laid back casual is the way to go. Now, before I go on, I hope you don't mind me reminding you to click on like and subscribe to help me get my channel out there. Right, let's talk a bit about the brand Unmarked. A couple of weeks ago, I released a video on Unmarked's DB Hunter boot, and in it, I went into some detail about the brand, so I won't say too much here. You can go back and watch that video if you want some more. But for you lazy guys out there, here's the potted version. They were founded by Chinese-Mexican Hugo Fons or Fonse. I'm sorry if I got the pronunciation wrong. The brand is based in León, Mexico, pretty widely recognized now as one of the centers of quality boot making. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a firm believer that geography does not make quality. So like the US, like Britain, like Indonesia and like China, there are good and bad quality boot makers in León, but on the whole, the standard is high and rising. Unmarked say that their why, their vision, is to make high quality, durable footwear with the added dimension of being unique and memorable. To do this, their mission, if you like, is to use traditional techniques like Goodyear welting and hand welting and combine that with modern approaches to design. They don't sub out their manufacture to large factories, but instead maintain their own workshop with a small force of artisans. Now, their range of product is actually quite impressive. If you take the link below, follow that to their website, you'll see a dizzying array of boots and shoes, including Western-style boots, service boots like their DB Hunter, lace-to-toes, Chelseas, even sneakers and sandals. Their modus operandi is to make your boots on order rather than keep expensive stock on the shelves. So it could take a couple of weeks before your order is shipped. Now, from my experience with these boots, their QC inspection before they send them out is impressive. Okay, so let's go into construction. As usual, I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. This outsole is a feature. Some people hate it, some people, well, they don't love it, but they're indifferent. Most people, I think, are suspicious of it. This is crepe rubber. Now, basically, treated latex straight off a rubber tree in Malaysia, Thailand, or Brazil. Sometimes it's called plantation rubber because it's almost made up on the plantation. The latex is tapped off a tree in cups, not unlike maple syrup for my North American friends. It's then taken to the primary factory on the plantation where the rubber is put into vats mixed with acid and other chemicals to make them liquid again and then poured into thin flat sheets. What emerges is a flat piece of rubber that's sent to factories elsewhere. There they're usually chopped up and mixed with more chemicals and treatments to vulcanize the rubber, but obviously some sheets are used directly to cut into soles. In this case, this outsole is hand carved and shaped from the rubber sheet in their workshop. The sole construction is attached to the uppers using a type of Goodyear welting called hand welting. Instead of attaching a piece of canvas to the insole, which is then used to stitch the insole and the uppers to the Goodyear welt, in this case, the leather insole is actually carved with a slit going around the insole. Now this creates a flap which is raised and takes the role of the canvas gemming. The Goodyear welt, a thin strip of leather, is stitched to this carved flap on the inside and through the turned-in uppers. In this case, a cork filling is put into the cavity that's caused by the 3 or 4 millimeter welt going around the edge. A leather shank is inserted, and then a 5 mil thick veg-tan midsole is glued on. After that, another 4 millimeter thick full slip rubber midsole is also glued on, basically for better adhesion, rubber to rubber. And then the welt, its outside stitch goes through the outside edge of the welt and through the 2 midsoles. Finally, the crepe rubber sole is then glued on. Now, a lot of people diss this crepe sole because they think it's cheap, picks up crap, as you can see, and will wear out. Funnily enough, though, it may wear just as long as a hard rubber outsole, exactly because it's soft and elastic. And when it does wear, all your cobbler has to do, if you catch it in time, is to peel off the glued outsole layer and glue another one on. A lot cheaper than removing and replacing stitched hard rubber outsoles. Now, moving on up, the uppers are hand lasted and the inside of the boot is fully lined with more veg-tanned leather. The uppers and lining combined is about 2 to 2.5 mils thick, so it's not incredibly thick, but because it's veg-tanned leather, the hand is smooth, but the feel is sturdy and stiff. Under your feet, they've glued on a comfort leather sock liner, and as far as I can feel, it's just leather with no extra foam pads. The heel counter cover on the inside, I don't know if you can see it, it's slightly roughed up veg-tan, as is indeed the heel counter and the toe stiffener. So apart from the crepe rubber, there's a heck of a lot of leather in this boot. Continuing upwards, the tongue is ungusseted, but it is lined. At the collar, the uppers are turned in and then sewn under the lining. I think it's a technique that's called French something, but I've forgotten it. They attach a cloth pull tab, and if people think this will pull out, think again. They're attached firmly to the top of the shaft, and then the lining reinforces the attachment. There are 9 bright brass eyelets, no speed hooks, and the hardware is unbacked. These laces are not original. They came with flat cream-colored wax cotton laces that were far too short for 9 eyelets. Firstly, there's that awkward lacing and unlacing to get your feet in and out without speed hooks. And then second, they were even too short to put them through the top eyelets and then tie an adequate knot. Definite room for improvement there. The stitching on the boot is very detailed, very clean, very precise. I mean, look at the precision of the quadruple stitching on the quarters. They run ridiculously evenly between each line of stitching, and each stitch is exactly the same length. The corners are doubled over with 5 rows of stitches. Look at the evenness and stitch density of the Goodyear welt stitch, running evenly and super close to the uppers. A word about the veg tan uppers. I don't know where they're from, but I'm guessing a Leon tannery, which first, kudos for sustainability and being part of the local community and industry, but second, really feels like good quality leather. For the relatively thin leather at around 2 mils, it's stiff and sturdy, has a smooth hand, and just feels right. Fresh out of the box, like all natural veg tans, it's very pale and almost pink. It scuffs very quickly, and the marks don't entirely or easily brush out. I know from experience, like on this pair of natural veg tanned Gold Rush boots by Fortis and Happiness Carpenter, some sun and 1 coat of conditioner later, there will be a golden honey. Taking care of them is just about keeping them free from dust and letting them have some fun in sun and moisture. As a veg tan, they already feel dry and they creak, but a couple of times a year you can condition them lightly with Venetian shoe cream or a waxy conditioner like R.M. Williams' leather conditioner, to which I've left a link below. These are going to be patina monsters if I can break them in enough, and that's the next part of the story. They are difficult to break in. In recent months, I've been into ramblers and kudus, which are very easy to break in. I've forgotten about veg tan leather, which is stiff out of the box. Couple this with that thick sole construction, which altogether is about 20 millimeters thick. It's bloody hard to bend and it creates a lot of heel slip. I haven't had blisters on my heels for a long time, and these brought them back. I'm sorry, but I don't think there's any solution but to wear them to break them in. I've had these on and off frequently for a couple of months now, and when I think I have to wear them to keep breaking them in, I shudder. I make excuses. I put on others first. I don't think there's anything for it but to put on thick socks and just wear them. Maybe get them wet and stick heel plasters on for protection. So this is one boot that I'm going to bring back to you in a couple of months rather than a year later, and give you a midterm review to see if they've become comfortable, because for now, they're not. Now, leaving the hard break-in and talking about sizing, the Unmarked website says to go true to size, and that works well. So while I wear 8Ds in most American heritage boots, I take these in an 8.5D, which is my Brannock measurement. Now, Unmarked say that the last is a D to E width last. I disagree. My feet are at the edge of D width, and these are just there, not going much into an E width at all, I think. When you order, you can order from sizes 6 to 14 with some half sizes, but no wider width. So if you are a true E or a double E, you may have to size up. Now, I would really contact them about this, because you really don't want to buy a US $450 boot and realize it's not going to fit. Now to value. As I've said earlier, these are listed currently at US $450. Leave geographic factory prejudice aside, because these are well-made boots. But are they worth that price tag? Now, the Oak Street bootmaker's trench boot is more than $450 when not on sale. I think arguably these are more consistently made. You know, the stitching and so on is a lot more even and clean. Depending on leather, Truman boots are $20 or $30 more than these. Again, I think these are more consistently made, but perhaps Truman's outsoles are better. Other reviewers have compared the quality of construction with Alden, but I don't see it. Maybe overall materials, yeah. I think as a boot nerd's boot, I definitely see value. As an everyday Joe's casual boot, I'd have to question it, especially if they're unaware of things like stitch density and French whatever it is, collars and hand welting. For a boot nerd, boot collector who would like a unique boot, this checks many boxes. The tough break-in, well, boot nerds like boots that make them bleed, don't they? Otherwise it's not a real boot, right? And as I gird my loins to pull them on again, that's it for this review. It's interesting, you know, in some of the comments for the unboxing and others, people call me an influencer. I don't see myself as one. I am definitely a reviewer. I have never, in 200 odd videos, ever said, buy this, despite having affiliate links or having been given boots for review. What I am super conscious of putting out there is what I see and what I like or what I don't like. Now, I have subjective taste just like you, and what I like, you may not. What I don't like, you may. Take what I say with what you see and weigh it up. Okay, as usual, click on like and subscribe, right? Take care out there, and until next week, wear your boots.